Welcome to this month's Greg Griffith Leadership Podcast. Join Greg Griffith as we together learn what it means to be leaders of our world as we faithfully love and faithfully lead. Like, share, rate, and review this podcast with your friends and others of influence, for they too are looking for people like you to help them lead in love day to day. Without further ado, here is your host, Greg Griffith.
Hey, thanks so much for joining Greg Griffith Leads, and I am so excited that you're back. Would invite you to rate, review, and share this podcast with everyone you know, and it's a lot of fun. And today I am so excited and I'm honored to be with my best friend, my pastor, also a guy who I look up to tremendously and respect so much, and then just have a lot of fun with. Tom Pfotenhauer, pastor out at Woodbury in Woodbury, Minnesota. Tom.
I thought you had the wrong person after that introduction, Greg.
Oh man, I mean, we lived together for I don't know how many years, and we're still friends. So, and I can't say that about many of my roommates. So,
I think it was just maybe one, man. Wasn't it just one? But then
I don't know. But then basically at seminary, we were in each other's dorm rooms, mainly yours, because you had the two tube TVs, giant tubes.
So good.
So good.
We had so many good setups, man. The kids would be jealous of what we had.
Oh, they wouldn't even understand it today. And so, yeah, it was so good. I'm surprised we're like functioning adults with Madden football and
we learned about leadership. We learned about functioning together in dysfunctional systems.
Yeah, for sure. And then also, I mean, like, what was in college? What we played there was Tecmo Bowl, and then also Twisted Metal. Remember
Twisted Metal is so good. That big clown car, I love that.
Just rocked.
You know who was good at that though? At seminary, we played it more. I think was actually Johnny V. I have to give it to
Johnny V. Yeah,
Johnny V. was also a pastor. He's
I think he
good.
Still might be a pastor. I think he still is.
He's probably listening to this podcast right now.
Well, maybe. We'll see. You never know. Oh my gosh. Hey, so Tom, you're what generation of pastors are you? Are you third, fourth generation, fifth? What is it?
Actually, it is 12th.
12th? Holy cow. Like I was way off. 12th?
12th. Yeah.
Is that like, wow. Oh my gosh.
Somewhere back just after Luther, I think, is what my dad has told me. So somebody crazy in our family has done all the research back.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy, but you know, we didn't have relatives that came over with our Saxony folks in the 1800s. I'm actually giving Walther a shout out in my message this weekend. They say we aren't real Lutherans, Greg, but I'm talking about CFW Walther and what led our folks to come over, how we're all shaped by the empire we live under. I don't think we had any relatives in that crew, but somehow, I don't know, we're connected to them.
That's amazing. I've got to wonder, I mean, 12th generation, you got to wonder, like, that's got to be one of the longest running.
The streak is in danger. It's in danger right now.
We'll see. I mean, there's always possibilities, or maybe the church will change, but I don't want to go there. Okay.
Yeah.
So,
please.
Hey, do tell me this: if you're speaking about Walther this weekend, please tell me you're going to have a picture of him.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, man. And
he is a good-looking man. He's a good-looking man. It's so good.
Oh, my gosh. Yeah. The good news is, like, I'm not the prettiest tool in the shed, but I beat Walther. I mean, I am better looking than him, and I can just say that amazingly. Like,
doesn't Paul say, do not think too highly of yourself?
Oh,
Greg.
it's still pretty
So-
low. Like I'm still low. Like, I mean, oh my gosh, 12 generations. Wow. And then Tom, you and I, we've been pastors. Hey, congratulations. 20 years in ministry. Like as a
Yeah, I
pastor.
guess we hit that year, hit the mark this year. It's
Wow.
crazy.
Isn't that crazy to think about? Like 20
Yeah.
years. So nuts. And then Tom, how many campuses do you guys have out at Woodbury?
So we have three locations. We have our original location, and then we have two locations that came through mergers with other congregations. So merger, however you want to say that word, we really went in, put in our DNA, brought people, brought pastors, that kind of stuff. And man, that's been such a blessing. One of those campuses is 12 years old now.
Wow.
And then the other's like 3, something like that.
Yeah.
And I know you're just dipping your toe into that merger takeover, whatever you want to call it.
Oh, we don't use takeover. We never use takeover.
Why not?
We use like a handoff.
Handoff. That's an interesting term.
Yeah.
But really the whole process that we've experienced is coming in with a posture of humility, which I know you guys have. And it is funny because folks on the other side of it will make jokes, from time to time, like, oh, you're Walmart coming in or whatever. But that's really not the heart behind it. It's not like it is for King of Kings. It's not King of Kings kingdom building. This is kingdom building, right? We want to work together with those who God is putting in our path to make an impact for Jesus. So that's really what it's about. It's never about making a large church larger, more people, etc. Every person is somebody who Jesus died for. So there's that piece of it. But we want to come in with that really humble spirit about it and just see what God is going to do. And, so much is listening and just coming alongside folks you could imagine having to close your church, how what that does to you, and those folks who've stuck around that long that are left at the end, they were invested. And so that opportunity just to, again, come alongside and let people kind of heal and bring some new energy. And then they start to see, baptisms happening and kids around, and it's like, oh my gosh, this is so beautiful. So that's kind of where we're at, and our dream is to continue to multi-site that way through mergers, kind of in the Twin Cities area.
Yeah. So let me ask this question. I have a few tangents that I'm going to want to just jump off to, but
go to them.
You know how it goes. But first, sticking with mergers, I've said for our church body, there's really only about 3 of us now that are in the more than 2. There's you guys, there's Trinity out in Lisle, there's Cornerstone out in Indiana, and I'm not sure if there's many others that have more than 2 out there. And so you're a pioneer. You've been doing this for a while now, and what would you say has been one of the challenges that now, kind of looking back and seasoned in this, like you look back and you just go, man, like, yeah, this has been a challenge, still is a challenge, something you're always working through on that.
Yeah, there's a couple of things that come right to mind. One is, how do you keep a church in multiple locations unified and moving together? We talk a lot about being connected but contextual. So each of our campuses has a little bit different feel and flavor. But we want people to know when they're at that campus, they're still a part of Woodbury Lutheran. And so trying to figure that out through just look, feel, all of that stuff. But then also, what are things that are required in terms of, what does kids ministry look like? What does youth ministry look like? What does our worship look like and feel like? Our original campus, we've got a huge $1 million pipe organ. Our other 2 campuses, the organs don't sound so good. So we're probably not going to use them there. And so how do you still then feel the same with a little bit of context? So that's always a challenge. And anytime you got people that want to do stuff, it's fantastic. But how do you build those systems and processes that keep you all moving together. And so a smaller campus can't act like a small church. And sometimes they'll want to act like a small church when it comes to announcements or, we want to do this project or that, and not see the bigger picture. So that's definitely a challenge. And then on the other side of it, coming from sort of central, you don't just want to be like, the person upstairs putting out all these commands and, so it's the people business. That's a big challenge. Then I think, from a staffing side of things, in our model, we have live preaching most of the time at our campuses. And so as we think about what does it look like at 6 or 8 or 10 or 12 campuses, can we continue to do the model the same? In fact, we're doing some work around that right now, like the scalability of our model. We've got really great preachers right now. But what happens in 10 years when they retire, and how are we replacing them? How do we still say unified? Because again, the campus is going to take on the personality of the guy who's preaching the most. Mm-hmm. So like this January, we're going to do something different. We're going to do 6 weeks of broadcast and videos. Great. with each of our campus pastors being seen everywhere, just to kind of go, all right, let's get people used to that. And, COVID helped in terms of people being more open to us trying things. And, this doesn't mean we're going to do it this way every time, because we do it that way one time. Yeah. But raising up definitely campus leads, campus pastors. We have a real, inclination, or I want to say it even harder than that. Like, we want to raise up folks from within, and our church body system makes that kind of difficult right now. We're not wanting to send people necessarily away to seminary, but we want them to have a great theological training, understand what it means to be a pastor. And we think that can happen best in the context of a local church where somebody's already serving, who knows who we are. I was just with some other pastors a few weeks ago, and they said we're at about a 70% rate of failure when we bring people in from the outside, and we're about a 90% rate of success when we raise them up from the inside. And we've all had that experience. So just all the staffing stuff, I think, is probably the other big challenge. And when you bring them on, that has budget implications. We're thinking about a 4th campus. We don't necessarily have the funding right now to bring on a pastor, but we need to get ready to launch that, and to, make sure our DNA is in that person.
Yeah, I love that. I love the connected and yet contextual. Our term here is we don't want to be identical, but we definitely want to be identifiable. And so,
yeah, that's cool.
So that's kind of how we
steal that.
We look. You can have it. Yeah, and so, but that's a big deal, and especially I think too, the challenge of one, your DNA and keeping people in there. I love the fact of you looking and saying, trying to broadcast. One thing I've learned as we do broadcast, and our model is simply only around broadcast.
Yep.
And we have our reasons for that. But one thing I learned recently, there's a church just not far away. I think it's in Sioux Falls, Iowa, or something like that. So, it's, a different country, but Iowa nonetheless. So
seriously.
Right. But like they have 5 campuses, and they tried Video Venue. And basically what they found out was most of their people were saying, I'd rather actually go to the broadcast campus. And so for them, Video Venue didn't work. And yet we found here in Omaha, where people are really reticent in life to travel more than 15 minutes because it's just part of the Omaha culture. Video Venue is something that here people are like, oh, this is fine. I love this. Yeah. As long as the church is 3 to 5 minutes from my house, I can watch the message online. And so, so that's really interesting too. I think contextually that will be interesting. As far as it even just goes in regions. So, that's good.
And I think how you start too, or people, so 12 years as a mainly in-person live campus, and now to all of a sudden try to shift that to all video or something. I don't know that will fly. We do pretty good with doing it on occasion, and I like to do that when we're kicking off a new series or something. Now our newer campus is more open to receiving it, which is interesting. I don't know if they want it full time or not. The big thing is, are people being cared for, right? And do they have somebody they can look to as their pastor? And I love that idea where somebody who's leading the campus doesn't have to spend an extra 15 hours a week on a sermon, but can be in the community or discipling their people, caring for their people without that extra burden. And then you just have to figure out other ways that they can, be in front of people and leading them, which of course you guys are great at figuring that stuff out.
Well, and this is a critique I actually think that I personally have, and I have also seen now. Carrie Nieuwhof definitely is moving into this reality of it's an unfair expectation or reality to say that your pastor, who is supposed to visit people, be available for meetings, weddings, and funerals, and then also kind of run the day-to-day operations of the church with whoever else is on side or on the board, and then they gotta deliver a lights-out sermon 52 times a year.
Yep.
And it's just impossible. Sure. And the reality is, me personally, and I think I'm a pretty decent preacher. Like I do a really good job at it. I've probably got 20 or 25 great messages in me for a year, and I need time to develop those. And so, our thing too is when you're looking at trying to get a campus to grow past 100. Or I think in our church body, our average worship size is 90, something like that. Like, allow the pastor to do what they're going to do best at, which is create relationships and be best at. And so, I think that's a really wise point on that, of getting our pastors out there so they're doing what they want to do. I heard this, like Jesus had 4 things, right? It was come and see. Right, come and see him, follow me, be with me and remain in me. And so the come and see and follow me are the preaching part, right?
Yep.
But the be with me and remain in me are the small groups, the care ministry, the hospital ministry. So for us, we're really trying to say, like, let our campus pastors and our campus directors do these 2 things, and let our teaching team do these 2 things. And these are the things that will actually keep people and then get people to invite people. These are the 2 things that people will go, hi, I kind of like this church. Like the message feels good, but this is what they get to stick. So that's really, really good. And of course, then the equipping piece of people, they can spend more time doing that. And we know that. I think the reason why most of our churches get stuck, well, there's a lot of reasons, but one of them is they look to the pastor to do everything. Yeah. And a pastor can care for effectively up to about 100 people. And if the pastor is expected to be at every moment in everybody's life, then they spend all their time doing that. But and that's, I think, been one of the huge reasons why our church has grown over the years, is because people don't look to the pastors for the care. Yeah, that's good. And I tell folks, like, I do almost no hospital visits or shut-in visits. Like, if you're there in my small group, or you're probably going to die if I show up in your hospital room. And so you can figure that out. If you're not in my small group, you know which bucket you're in. And of course, there's exceptions for that. And there's times where you jump up, or there's people that kind of were more disciple. Like, I see my role as senior pastor, or you call yourself lead pastor, or whatever. Your staff calls you the czar pastor, I've heard. Wow. It's pretty sweet. It's more the pastor of our staff, and equipping our staff and caring for our staff so that they can be doing that. Yeah. But then you need a whole army of care people if you want your church to grow, because that's how people are going to feel connected. Those last 2 things that you talked about, the abiding and remaining. Takes everybody to do that, not just the pastor. And as Lutherans, y'all,
if you're Lutheran and listening to this, like we had the market cornered on priesthood of all believers, and somehow we're turning into it's all about the pastor and the pastoral office, which is terrible.
Yeah, and that's so true. I mean, I loved when I first got into ministry. My predecessor in Macomb, Mike Lutz, was really good in that he wanted and talked about everyone being a minister, and that every job was a minister. And so that was a really good spot. I love when I got here to King of Kings, one of the mantras that I've kind of made sure we double down and say even more is that even kids are ministers too. And so like I mean, kids are amazing ministers. I love them.
Oh my gosh.
But that's a huge piece. And I agree. I think there's been a small shift in our church body as far as priesthood of all believers, but it's not lost. And I think it takes leaders like you, Tom, to double down on it, and others to lead the way and say, no, let's not lose our roots. And and your roots go deep, 12 generations deep of following and sharing what Luther saw, which was, it's not about clergy centric. It's not about Rome. It's not about priests speaking the mass in a language that no one understands, or being the garters of communion. I just heard this, Tommy. This was awesome. Luther wrote in his Bohemian Letters, which I have to look in because I'm pretty sure I've never read it. But he said there's three important pieces, and that must be guarded, and they're in these order of preference of the way that they're to be treated and used in order of holiness. And he said first is the proclamation of the word. So that's got to be protected and guarded to proclaim it properly. Second was baptism.
Wow.
So baptism is something that we've got to keep our market on, that this is for anyone and everyone. And he said, and then the third and least of the importance of them is communion. And like we have it and we use it, but I think in our church body, we've actually made communion kind of this like elevated status.
Oh, totally.
Even above everything else. And we've actually made baptism third. And I think the word of God kind of intermixes somewhere in there. So anyways.
That is interesting.
Yeah. So Bohemian Letters by Luther, which I'm going to be reading and probably sending to a few friends I know. Okay, question for you, Tommy. So hearing all that, from how you began in ministry 20 years ago, and now where you're at with 3 campuses looking at a 4th, how has ministry changed for you?
Oh my gosh, so much has changed. I think we've gone through this time where we've seen this shift in church in general. I'm going to grab a book quick. I just finished reading this guy, The Great Dechurching, which talks about how basically in the last 20 years, 70 million folks who had been engaged in church have really walked away from the church. And of course, there's a variety of reasons for that. And it's easy, I think, to read a book like this and get a little defensive and say, well, that's just people moving away or they're lazy or whatever. But there's definitely some trends that we've seen. And I think anytime you see that stuff, I remember a book I read a long time ago. Who was it by? It was one of the Barna guys. Maybe it was Kinnaman. Just talking about how outsiders view the church. And there was those 6 or 8 things. The church is too political. The church hates homosexual people. All those lists. And whether they're not true or not, that's the perception of people. And so there's been this huge shift in culture. I think even since we got into ministry, man, I can remember back in the early 2000s. This is a long time ago, people, when we first started pastoring, there was still a sense of even then, and it was beginning to shift, but, church centric, the whole thing around same-sex marriage and things like that. Even President Obama back in the day was saying, no, that will never happen. And I'm not for that, if you remember. And that was kind of the era that we were starting our ministry in, where still the church was the center of a lot of people's lives, and pastors were looked highly upon. Christians were looked more highly upon than they are today. And so we've gone through not only, just huge cultural shifts that are happening, but then also like what's happening in our own church body. Man, you can look at the numbers. 20 years ago, we had about the same amount of churches we do today, maybe even a few less. But what's completely shifted is the number of churches that have 50 people or less is like tripled from when we started. And the number of churches that have 1,000 people or more has gone the other way, and 500 or more has gone the other way. So there's this transition within our church body that so many of our churches are rustling. And then, of course, just the advent of technology. We're talking about broadcasting sermons. My gosh, 20 years ago, it was like, who's got the cassette tape ministry going, right? Oh,
Yes.
Pastor, sorry, man, the cassette tape broke halfway through your sermon this week, and you were sending out tapes. You remember that to people, and then you had CDs and all of that. And I think there's been a big shift that I've noticed in my ministry from kind of that some of that growth mindedness or church growth stuff and seeker sensitive services, all of that, to a more of a, how do we disciple people to follow Jesus? Like, this is what we're about. And it's not about gimmicks. It's about protecting the word, letting the word do its thing. Seeing how we have these great sacraments where God shows up all the time. He promises all the time, but then also to be willing to say, you know what, he can show up outside of these ways, and he does in incredible ways. And let's not put our God in a box. Of course, growing in our own leadership, from associate pastors who probably have all the answers and think about all the things we would do if we were senior pastor and all the changes we'd make, to having to sit in that chair. I loved my time as a second chair leader. I learned so much. Especially here at Woodbury from Dean Addisty about what ministry and leadership looks like, but then transitioning into that lead pastor role. Just learned so much about myself, my own shortcomings, things that I'm good at, just getting more and more comfortable in my own skin and my own leadership style. I definitely have a leaning toward people pleasing, which probably all pastors do. Why else would you be a pastor? You want to help people, but being able to grow in that and not just go, I'm here to please God. Paul says it. I'm a servant of God. I'm not a servant of man.
Yeah.
And if I was still trying to please man, I wouldn't be a servant of God. And so just growing in that. But I think people, man, whether it was 20 years ago or today, they're people in need of hope. We have the greatest message of hope. We're good news people. I say this is my message this week. We're not Fox News people. We're not CNN news people. We are good news people. And the world around us needs that so badly. And what a joy and a privilege and an honor. We say this to our staff all the time. Like, we get to do this. It's a privilege to be here. Doesn't mean it's always easy or we always get along. But it's a privilege to do what we get to do. And I think we overcomplicate it sometimes, right? And you need systems and processes, and that's all good. But yeah, kind of fun to think back, Greg, for 20 years about what's shifted and changed, and it's a lot.
Yeah, it really is. And it's interesting to, I think what I heard you say that I really resonated with is, one, we came into a whole different culture as an American culture. And and so we've really had to learn. I think our generation of pastors has had to learn how to navigate that culture and yet stay strong with the Word of God that we have, and because it's just very different. And yet how are you in the world but not of the world?
Totally.
And then also letting those of the world know that the church is for them to transform their lives and to be more like Jesus, and that we're all broken and on
Huge.
that. And then I think also, like, man, to think about moving from second seat and second chair, which some days I kind of go, "Oh, I wish I was back in the second chair." Like,
never.
so much easier. But then to the first chair, and then what I've learned actually over the last year is the first chair on one campus looks different than the first chair with multiple campuses.
Yeah.
And actually, like, this is me, like, and you know me probably better than anyone except for maybe my wife. But I like, for me, I've learned multi-site campus, the chair I'm in,
Cool.
I have less, I'm going to use control. It's not the right word. But like,
Influence,
I have to let
even.
go. Yeah. I know a lot less that's happening. And then when I speak, it's about the three kind of things that I really care about and that I see as like part of how God has wired me to say, this is how we live our church out. But it's really fascinating because when you're only one campus, you're in on everything from like, what color chairs are we having, or what should this look like out in the front lobby area? And then once you're multi-campus, it's kind of like, I don't know. And I can't really speak into that.
It's so interesting. So we brought on a campus pastor this last year to our original location. And so now I'm out of even like worship decisions here on this campus.
Wow.
And it's been interesting. You know, we've been learning. It's okay. I'm trusting to hand this off to you, Daniel. And Daniel, like, there are times just run something by me, because people still come to me and go, why did we do this, or why didn't we do that? And I don't want to be able to say, or I don't want to say, I don't know either. Nobody told me, which has been a couple of cases. I want to be able to say, well, that's the decision that we made, and I got their back, and I'm supporting them and encouraging them. So you'll get that too, even when you bring on a campus pastor or campus lead at your original location, to get you out, because we shouldn't be making those decisions. We've got other things that we have to be focused on. But that's been a big shift for me now, even as sort of senior pastor overall, but without the FaceTime at our other two campuses, or not as much, which is really hard, where I want people to see their campus pastor as their pastor. But then how do I still influence and cast vision and create culture? It's been an interesting learning process. So I'm glad I'm not the only one.
Yeah, you know, and then I want to get to something that I actually want to spend the rest of our time with. But one of the things that's been really hard for me is at our Northwest site, and then if we add our third site here, we'll know here shortly. But if we add that third site, when I get the opportunity to go to Northwest, right, people recognize and see me because they see me on a video. Unless they were people that we sent over there, I don't know who they are. And when we sent people over there, we only sent 100 people to start that campus, and they're at 230, and our campus director, Peter, is killing it, doing amazing. But I look around the room and I go, I don't know these people. And so, like, for me, like, just letting that go, because we're taught, we were taught, right? You're the pastor, you need to know all your people, right? And then even when I got to Michigan, it was like, well, you're not going to know everybody, but there's going to be 500 or 600 people that are your regulars that you'll just always know. And I, like Northwest, I just know a few, and then our third site that we're looking at, to be honest, I'm not going to know anyone. I mean, I'm just, and so that's going to be, it's just fascinating. All right, where I want to go, Tom, with you is this. God has really been pushing it in me recently about building church health and having healthy churches. And I'm not talking organizationally, but of people, because the body of Christ. And I've really become convicted recently about the fact that that is a holistic approach. And I think that's not just having a leader or church workers who are healthy spiritually. I think that's one piece of the pie. I think they need to be healthy emotionally, and I also think they need to be healthy physically. And Tom, you're in the best shape of your life. You've always been in great shape.
Sure.
But you just ran a Chicago Marathon. You've got the London Marathon coming up. I know you're a fully no sugar guy. I'm with you. I'm pretty close. I'm probably like no sugar 99% of the time. My birthday, I did have some ice cream because my wife made
You
it.
should. You have to. You have to on occasion, man. I had a huge bowl after the marathon. Trust me.
Oh, good for you. Yeah. Yeah. I got sick after having mine on my birthday. But anyways, we don't need to go there. But can you just talk about like when you hear the holistic health part? Because I really think this is a spot, unfortunately, where I look, most church workers and church leaders are not healthy in those three areas.
Yeah.
And then when we talk about how do we help our church body be healthy, I just think if one area is lacking, we're going to lose on the whole body. And I don't know, what are your thoughts about that?
That's really great. We have 5 staff values, and one of them is healthy. It's not my favorite. My favorite staff value is MacGyver. So you Gen Xers know what that means.
I do.
Figure out a way to get it done and make it happen.
Chewing gum.
Yeah, fun is another one of our values, but healthy is one, and we have 4 areas in it. It's the physical, emotional, spiritual, and relational. And it's interesting, right? For all of us, parts of that are easier than others. You might be surprised, but like for me, that spiritual side is one I got to work on a lot. So around just prayer and devotional life, reading my scripture. I got my Bible right here, and one of the things I do with this every day is I read 2 chapters and I take notes in it. It's one of these, guys that has margins on it. But what I'm doing is I'm going to give this to my daughter at her confirmation. And so I write little notes to her in there and just reminders of her identity, things we've done together, just so she'll have memories, but it's also helped me be disciplined and more healthy. Now there's days where I'm like, I haven't read my Bible. I'm going to be able to write a note to my daughter. And that's just helped to move the needle for me. We do some things at night. The Dwell app, who are our good friend and mentor, Bill Tucker, introduced to us. We listen to scripture going to sleep every night, my wife and I. We do some devotional stuff with her daughter. So that's helped on the spiritual side. The physical side's always been pretty easy for me because if I don't do something, I don't feel good. I'm not a sit around kind of a person. So if I don't have a goal or whatever, I just don't feel good, and I want to be at my best. I remember Dean Rockeman at seminary. Remember this?
Oh, yeah.
Talking about if my mom is on the 15th floor of the hospital and she's dying and you're her pastor and you need to visit her, you better be able to get up those stairs. And then they gave us like 50 donuts to eat, which was great. So bizarre. But yeah, I think we are created, right, to take care of our bodies and to fuel them, right? And you've got folks like Craig Gershell, who I'm not even close to his level of like at 2 p.m. I eat this snack and at 2:30 I'm doing this workout or whatever. But there's small steps that we can take. And actually, I think our denomination does really a great job on this by offering some of the things that they do through our health services if you're with them. But there's all kind of, it's not, content is not the issue, but it's just taking that step. And I'm not, I'm flexible around it too. You got to be. But then the relational side too, Greg, is, we had a good conversation in our leadership team yesterday about staff morale. And there was 3 or 4 folks that, they're feeling anxious and they're not sleeping at night from people's teams. And is it because we're moving too fast and, the anxiety around work, and, we're all wired differently that way too. When it comes to emotional health and things that we've experienced in our lives, and maybe it's anxiety or depression. So we do some things for our staff there where we say, through our healthcare, you get 6 free visits a year to a counselor. But if you need more than that, we will pay for that because it's that important that you're healthy. But I think what we tend to do is we zone in on one of those areas that we're really good at, and then we forget the others. And so, like anything else, having people around to encourage you in those areas. We do staff awards every month. And so I'll highlight somebody in that healthy area. And one of the areas of the 4, where we've seen somebody take a step. And I think that's been encouraging for folks. And then we try to build that into our culture. When you see something, name it. You see somebody acting healthy, name it. To just continue to develop that. Because I think you're right, man. You can have all the right systems and programs and all of that, but if you don't work on the healthy side of a staff, especially, but then also within an entire congregation, it's just that the organization is not going to be as strong as it could be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's really rich, and I love that. I love the relational part. I'm gonna have to think and marinate more on that. That's a huge part, and I think there's something, especially with staff, right? Like, first of all, just even workplace satisfaction.
Yep.
You need to have like really good friends on your staff. Doesn't mean everyone's equal in that. I mean, and it doesn't mean they're not your friends, but what it does mean is you have some that are just really good friends, and that's an important part. And so, and that circles us back here, just as far as kind of looking at as leading your church and leading those spots. Tom, let me ask this question. What are you excited about for where you guys are going as a church and as a staff and as a team?
It's funny. So I'm 47. Is that what you are too? You're 46?
Yep, 47. We're the same age for about 6 months. You're a little bit older than me.
Yeah, something like that. And it feels like I'm just beginning to kind of come into my own in terms of leadership. Both of us have been senior pastors for a while.
Mm-hmm.
I think
we came at this around the same time, 12, 13, somewhere in there.
Yeah. So like 33, 34, 35. Mm-hmm. And
just kids.
Somebody, yeah, right. Somebody saw potential in us.
Yeah.
To do, good things and to use our gifts. And so the older I'm getting, the more excited I get about seeing that same potential in other people and really seeing people come into their own. Like I love our campus pastor here, our original location, young guy right out of seminary. He had been a vicar with us, but he's doing so great, and to be able to share that with him and be excited about what God is doing in him and just listening to how God is moving in the next generation. So that's one thing I'm really excited about, is just the next generation of leaders and Jesus followers that God is raising up. Like I think there's going to be incredible revival and renewal and restoration in the church through this next generation. So show me, Jesus, how I don't mess it up, and then how I can get out of the way when it's time. I think I got a lot of juice left, and I don't know what God's gonna use for that. But I'm really excited about just what I'm seeing in that generation and the hope that's there. Like, the church is not dying. Might look different in 10, 15 years than it does today, and in 50 years than it does today. Probably should look different. Mm-hmm. But with Jesus at the center, I think there's incredible opportunity. I'm off the chart on positivity in Strength Finders, so that's like my thing that I lean into. I just think there's so much opportunity for the church to make a difference again in the world around us. You said something earlier, Greg, really profound, that even those who are not in the church need to know that the church is for them. Because Jesus is for them. And I'm so grateful to be part of a congregation, and I know King of Kings is the same, that just looks outside of ourselves in ways that we could connect with people and make a difference, whether it's local missions or people we'll never get to meet. Like, God has given us so much. God has given King of Kings so much. There is so much then expected of what you're going to do. And that's not a pressure thing. I think on our worst days, that is a pressure thing, and it becomes then about us. But on our best days, this is our God is a God of abundance and provision, and He wants to do incredible things. So dream big. I've got this picture on my desk of Oliver, and Oliver passed away 6 months ago. And he had this phrase always of dream big, and it's probably backwards on your screens.
It's perfect.
I realize that, but I'm perfect. Like, I have to put that in a frame and keep that in front of me, because our God will do abundantly more than we could ever imagine. And so I always try to hold that tightly or loosely. I'm not sure which one. Like, God is going to do something, I just want to be, along for the ride with him and faithful to him and faithful to loving people. And there's going to be times where I get it wrong. But thankfully Jesus is there to pick us up out of the water and say, let's try again. And I think the more we get that message to people, wow. So I'm always excited about Jesus.
Yeah. Oh, that's so good. And I love that. And that's so true. I think one thing I've heard out of that, of many things, but one for sure is the wisdom of the power of words of affirmation and acknowledgement, and especially to other generations. I don't think this is accurate, but it reminded me to be better. My youngest Tessa is in confirmation right now, and they start every confirmation small group with like, what's one kind thing that your mom or dad said to you this past week? And
wow.
And her confirmation small group leader said, Tessa's like, oh, nothing. And she's like, not nothing, like not one kind thing from your mom or dad all week. And I went back and I just thought, like, was I intentional about it? And I was like, no, I wasn't. And so now I'm kind of like, okay, every day, like, to both of my girls, just find something to intentionally say affirming wise. And even with staff, like, sometimes, I mean, I'm an achiever, so I just look at, like, let's get up the mountain, and then let's say, oh wait, there's another mountain, let's go. And I forget to say, hey gosh, like, look where we came from. Great job, everybody. And so, but there's power.
Why should we have to say it, right? Like, that's
yeah, I know, but we do, and especially those lower generations. Because Tom, I don't know about you, but when I think back, when I was an associate pastor, I don't recall a whole lot of words of affirmation from my senior pastor. And I'm not saying it was bad or he was bad. I'm just saying I don't recall them. And gosh, I think I want others to say, Greg always poured gas on our fire. And it was great. And so that's something I heard on that. All right, man. Wow. What's one thing you want to say to close us out today?
Close us out with one thing. Oh my gosh, man. There's so much to say. I guess what's on my heart and mind right now, we're 2 weeks away from our election. And there's all kinds of thoughts and opinions out there. We could make this a political podcast. That's what we're doing on our church podcast for 4 weeks, going through a series of how we engage in the process faithfully, right? Like, at the heart of everything, our role is to proclaim the gospel. Like, that's what we are about. And we live under an empire that where we have an opportunity to make a difference, make an impact. And one of the things, I guess, that's really on my heart right now is whatever camp you land in or whatever party you say your party is, like, that's fine. But then make sure you are calling out your party on areas where they are not following the ways of Jesus. And there's plenty of those places in both parties where we can speak up and we can say, this is my person, but it doesn't mean I love everything about them or the policies that are being pushed forward by either platform. And it's going to be my role as I engage in that to call out even my own parties on those things that need to be different. And I think that would maybe shift culture and how we view one another, because we put each other in the boxes, don't we? Like, you're all or nothing these days, and a little bit of humility in the midst of that. And so, this focus back on Jesus, that he's our king. We live under the empire, but we're not of this kingdom. We live in the kingdom that has come and will be coming fully when Jesus comes again. And so, as followers of Christ, let's just be really slow to speak and quick to listen. Let's not get all bent out of shape. I had 2 or 3 folks come up to me after service Sunday. This is the most important election in the history of our nation. Like, that's been said every election. I went back, I did some research, election of 1800, and it was nasty, man. It was Jefferson and I think Adams. They ended up, having this great relationship afterward, but they were calling each other all sorts of stuff. And if Jefferson's elected, we'll become a nation that no longer believes in God and full of atheists. And Adams, you don't even know if he's a man or a woman. He's some sort of hermaphrodite, was one of the things the newspaper was saying, right? Like, are you kidding me? And so it's always been a mess. So let's not put our hope in the kingdoms of this world. Let's put our hope in the kingdom of Jesus, and let that shape then how we live, how we interact with each other. It doesn't mean we don't have opinions. It doesn't mean we're somehow capitulating to culture, or that truth no longer reigns supreme. Mm-hmm. Like, come on, man. We're LCMS Lutherans. Like, we have this incredible foundation of truth and theology. But the way we build on that does not have to be a divisive, broken, judgmental, angry, anxious-filled, fear-fueled sort of disposition. Mm-hmm. We're good news people. So I guess that's my last word. Let's be that. Let's be good news people.
Oh, that's so good. Yeah, you made me. I know how much you love cheesy Christian analogies, right? 3 nails, 1 cross is forgiven. A reminder of, like, we don't follow the elephant or the donkey. We follow the lamb, right?
Yeah, there you go. So bad.
So bad. Okay, Tom. Last question. We believe in a divine call. You have been called divinely, and know God has said you've got to take it to be the chaplain of the Detroit Lions or the Los Angeles Lakers or the New York Yankees. Which one are you choosing?
Oh my gosh, that's all so bad. But I would definitely, I would have to go with the Lions.
Yeah, come on.
And the reason why is because Coach Campbell needs a little bit more humility in the way that he sends his players after other teams' players like TJ Hawkinson to break his knee and destroy his knee. So just a little more Jesus within the Lions, I think, would be helpful, especially after that crushing defeat of my beloved Vikings this last week.
You got to admit, how much did you love watching Dan Campbell just do play after play after play against the Cowboys to try to get one of his linemen a touchdown after last year's blatant cheating by the refs in the NFL?
It was pretty cool to see what happened to the Cowboys. Like, oh my gosh, he's trying to score again
on Jerry Jones's birthday. It was so great. Oh my gosh, it was so much fun. Yeah, regardless of our different sports irregardless of our different sports teams, we are both Norris fans, and there's nothing better than the NFC Norris.
That's right.
Yeah, that's great. Hey, Tom, this has been absolutely awesome. Thank you so much for the time. And where can people find you and reach out to you if they have anything they want to get a hold of you with?
Oh, wow. Like that. I'm on the socials occasionally.
Okay.
Email is probably an easy way. tom@woodburylutheran.org. And our website, wlc.church, has all our stuff up there. Yeah, we put it up there for everybody to see because God is doing great stuff here. We want people to be blessed.
Love it.
Blessed by the way that He's moving in our church. So if we can ever do anything to help any, we talked to a lot of churches around the multi-site stuff and our experience there. Generosity, we love pushing generosity and see that in lots of different ways. So happy to connect with anybody.
Great. Thanks, everybody. Like, share, rate, and review this podcast. And once again, TP, thanks so much, man. Love you.
Thank you, Greg.
Thank you for being a part of this month's Greg Griffith Leadership Podcast. Join Greg next month for leadership insights to faithfully love and faithfully lead. Now go be terrific today.